Right, hello, and welcome to my tutorial on creating tools to increase your productivity while making games in Unity. Now, the idea from this tutorial came from me developing my game Loud or Quiet. It's a top-down shooter. Go play it on itch.io, etc. But yeah, basically, it's like little things. It's not particularly complex tasks. It's just things that you'll end up doing a lot. So one thing I created was a tool to place colliders. So if I press left click here, right click here, and then press the middle mouse button. Oh, it doesn't create it there. Yeah. To see how it creates a collider. And there's like two colliders here because one marks out where actual things will impact, and the bigger one marks out where the pathfinding stops, so enemies don't collide into walls and stuff. So yeah, so that's a tool I made. And on the other hand, if I were to do that manually, because it's not like complex, just two colliders on a game object, so we'd have to add a component, 2D box collider, have to change the layer to be a pathfind block, then we'd have to create an empty child, 2D box collider again, have to make it a bit bigger, and we'd have to change that to a star block, and there. So, but then we'd have to move it about and place it to wherever the wall was and not. But by using the furniture editor, we can just create. It just speeds up the process of doing a simple task, right? And that's the kind of the idea of the tutorial. We're going to be making a tool to build a world, but I'm going to try cover different ways, different things you can do, like basically creating objects, so you can take away little bits of the code and do what you want or whatever. That's the idea. I've also got a one for placing objects, so see it'll load up all the sprites in a specific folder, and say I want a train. I can click here, and that's the cursor. I've clicked the wrong one. Shit. Place objects. I can't even remember. Yeah, I can rotate them. Yeah, you get the idea. I've just forgotten how to use it because I stopped using it, but whatever. Yeah, let's go and have a look at the actual tutorial. Okay, so now we're in the tutorial bit. I'll just show you what we're going to cover today. It's basically just going to be creating objects and a mouse click in the scene. So we'll be getting the position of the mouse cursor as a world coordinates within the scene view rather than doing it actually in-game, and just instantiating an object and storing that. So if you see on here, on this tool script, we've got a custom inspector. So now we can create objects on mouse click. So if we set that to true, we can now click. Oh, sorry, you have to hold Alt and click because yeah, that's how I set it up. So as you can see, we are creating objects at the mouse cursor, and as you can see, they're getting stored in the list. And if we click these destroy object buttons, it will just clear them out. And these are stored in created objects and created as game objects. Yeah, but I will explain that in a moment. So let's get on to the sort of code of that then. Okay, so first off, I'm just going to mention a little bit about custom editors, or custom inspectors, sorry. Basically, that just the inspector is what you see in this bit here. So it'll contain all the lists of variables and stuff of a particular script. But we can also use the onInspectorGUI method to create to be able to draw our own things. So say we could draw these buttons that call methods. So we want to say that we want to create objects or we want to destroy objects, we can do that. There's a couple of things you have to know about them. One is that all custom inspectors must be stored in a folder called editor, so Unity can load them. And each custom inspector must have a corresponding script that it is the editor for, if that's not obvious. So I'll just show you that. So as you can see here, we've got our tool script, which has the lists of objects. One is in-game objects, which I'll go over in a minute, or later, actually. And one is just the created objects as game objects. And we have a public prefab example. We can load objects and folders and stuff, so we will do that in a later episode. But for now, we just start storing it in the inspector. So yeah, so this is the tool script, and the tool script inspector is a little bit different. So it's the custom editor type of tool script. So we're saying, all right, this is a custom editor for a particular script. We've got to inherit from the editor class, sorry. And we've also got to import the Unity editor scripts, or classes, or whatever it's called. So we can use them. Was there anything else in the scripts? Yeah. So this then we can then use on inspector GUI. So this is basically the GUI function for that inspector bits you saw here. So this bit here. And where is it? Inspector. So basically, we can draw a default inspector. So that this bit will just draw what Unity decides to draw for a particular script. So in this case, it'll give us the list of created objects because they're public, the list of created objects as game objects, and the public prefab example. But we've also got our bit that we've defined. So first off, we've got a button which basically just switches a boolean between true and false. So if we want to create objects or not, it'll basically set it to the inverse, so it's like an on-off switch. And then for each of these objects in the list that we stored them in, we're going to create a button to say we want to destroy them at whatever position they're at. And if we click that button, it'll destroy the object and remove it from the list by calling the method. So yeah, and that is how the inspector works. And now we'll go on to the actual something else. Okay, so basically the first thing we'd want to do is kind of getting the mouse position as like a world coordinate within the scene view camera, because we're going to be using, well, since we're not in play mode, we'll be using this scene camera rather than, the game camera, if it'll click onto it. Yeah, so it works slightly differently. Basically, we get in, storing it under a vector tree like normal, and we're basically using the event.current. So that is basically just it's another way of detecting input, but it's not like using input. It just gets you the mouse position to X and Y. Because I don't think the actual input class runs when you're not in play mode. So yeah, so basically this just gets the current X and Y coordinates on the screen and draws them. And then we have to do a little bit of manipulation for it, because basically, if we don't do this for the Y axis, then it will it's sort of inverted. So if you move the mouse cursor towards the top of the screen, the actual position in the game will move down. So we have to invert it slightly. Well, not invert it, but we have to take away the current, the scene view, which is just the scene view for the camera. The one that's been drawing the camera, and it gets the height of the screen and takes away the mouse position.y, and that'll give us the accurate Y coordinate. And then we again use the scene camera again, or scene view camera again, to convert its screen to world point, which is basically the same as when we were using the when you can use the main camera as well if you're doing this in game to convert from a screen to world point. And we set the Z to 0 because we're doing it in 2D. So yeah, that is how you get the camera. I hope that made sense. And we get the mouse, we just got it stored here, get mouse and scene, so it can be like referenced by anything else really. And also one more thing is the if my script in this case is the instance of the script is attached to. So it'll be the target, basically just gets the script that this particular inspector is attached to. So say if I had multiple ones of these, so I can click here. Oh, it does actually, because I've duplicated it. I can destroy that and click create objects here, but I don't think it'll create it in here. No, see. So, but if I can create mouse objects here, and you get the idea. So it references the instance that it's attached to rather than just as a general thing. Right. Okay, and one more thing is that the on-scene GUI is basically called every frame, and it is basically just a GUI. It's basically just an on-GUI method for this scene camera. So I think okay, so now we're getting on to the actual creating of objects in the scene view. So what we've got here is basically a method that takes a vector free and will just create an instance of this prefab object. So first off, we just check if both these lists are initialized, and if they're not, we do that. Then we just, as you would if you were running the game, you just call the instantiate method with an object, position, and a rotation, and it will create the object, and then we store the object. Now, one thing you'll probably see is that we have an in-game object that instead of just having it as a normal object. That is because sometimes you have to mark a class as serializable in order for the, like, if you were storing it in a list, you might have to do with that to make sure it doesn't get erased when it's on play mode, because I've encountered that issue before. But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm not sure if that's to do with the data type or whatever. But yeah, but you can also get have the advantage of you can write methods to manipulate them if you have these wrapper classes for objects, even if it's just like storing something simple like a game object. Then you could have like methods to manipulate them or whatever, and that'd be good. But you can also just store it as a normal game object sometimes. If it does like not stick around after you press play, then that might be why. So you'd have to write one of these wrapper classes. And yeah. But if you aren't needing to really manipulate them after creating them in the world, then you don't really need to store them. You can just create them as game objects, whatever. And again, we have a destroy object. So this basically just removes it from both the lists of in-game objects and game objects. And instead of using destroy, the normal destroy method, we use destroy immediate. So that basically just destroys it immediately. Because, yeah, I think destroy is just when it's running the game. And these methods are linked up to the unseen GUI. So if the creating objects boolean is true, which we set with this button here to create objects, then we check for mouse events that are occurring. And if we detect a mouse event, and if it's the event mouse up, so if the mouse has been clicked and released, and if the mouse button was 0, so that is the left mouse button, 1 is the right mouse button, and the middle mouse button is 2. And I think I'd assumed that I'd go incrementally for if you have one of those fancy mouses with additional buttons. And if the alt is true, so I like to have all these things bound to when I'm holding the alt key. So if I'm not wanting to create them, I can just let go of the alt key and then move around the scene or whatever. That'd be good. And basically what this does is it'll basically call the method to create the object in the scene using the get the mouse in the scene that we assigned before. And then what we do is we set the script to be dirty and set the myscript.game, the game object, to be dirty. I'm trying to think of a way to explain this, but yeah. As far as I understand, this is basically saying like this object. It's a way of saying to the Unity editor that saying, all right, this object has changed since the last time we saved. I think if so, it'd say like, oh right, you have to save the thing editor or something. If someone has a better explanation for that, please tell me in the comments or something. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then likewise, we go through all of the created objects and we create a button to say we want to destroy them. So we destroy objects at this position, and it calls the myscript.destroyObject method, and that just creates that there. Sorry. So yeah. That's pretty much the basics of creating tools. Next week we'll go into something more advanced. I think I have to write at the moment. So yeah, it's not all that complex, and stuff like this can save you a lot of time. It's always nice to have custom tools, but okay, yeah. So I'll just give you a quick demo again. I don't even need to press play. Why am I doing that? So if I press this button here, we can hold Alt and click, and we will create objects at the mouse position in the world. But if we click these buttons again, we can destroy them, and yeah. So yeah, cheers for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that shit. Go check out the links in the description for my stuff on Itch.io. Loud or Quiet's coming along nicely. There should be an update out with the weekend with 3 new missions, actually, and a load of updates for performance and sounds and stuff, and it'll be reet good, so go play that. Alright, cheers for watching. Bye.